Time now for Inside Utah Politics.
Well, thank you for joining us. I am Lindsay Arts. Let's go inside Utah politics. Utah lawmakers are considering a suite of proposals to establish a new top elections officer. Through a combination of new code and a constitutional amendment, Utah could have a Secretary of State taking over the Lieutenant Governor's election oversight role by 2028. Now, the idea has some precedent in Utah. We had a Secretary of State instead of a Lieutenant Governor until 1976. A plan for an independent elections office died on the vine last session, and the Senate seems cool on the idea again this year. So I sat down with this sponsor to see how she hopes to get the idea across the finish line next week. Representative Lisa Shepard, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so the Senate seems cool on this idea of creating a Secretary of State. How do you plan to get this through that chamber?
Well, there'll be a lot of conversations that'll be had, and once my Senate sponsor has an opportunity to go and have those conversations, then I think we'll have some help over there.
Can you remind me who that is?
It's not disclosed yet.
Oh, we don't know that yet.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
interesting.
I mean, I know, but.
Okay, interesting. Okay, so just talk to me about why you feel like this is the best policy for Utah. Obviously, right now we have a lieutenant governor. She is on a ticket with the governor. It was in the 1970s when we last created this lieutenant governor position and did away with the Secretary of State. So why now? Why do you want to bring it back?
Technically, it was actually 1980 when we made that change. There was a study that happened with the commission from the 60s to just evaluate the entire executive, I guess we'd say. And in 1974, the voters rejected it. And there were two reasons why they rejected it. One, at least the debate that I heard. I've listened to all of the floor debates from 1974, 1975, and all the way through on this one. And one of the parts that they were concerned about, and I think the voters agreed with, 56%, it wasn't 56, I don't remember what the percentage was, but it was a high percentage. But they failed that because there's an inherent conflict of interest. When you put the referee in the middle of the game as a starting quarterback, and then you have the shared ticket as the team manager, you're creating something there that is an inherent conflict of interest within our structure. Now, this has nothing to do with anyone that's ever held that position, anyone that currently holds the position. I'm actually quite fond of our lieutenant governor. You
have a separate bill, though, to just set up a process for conflict of interest. So if we can handle the conflict of interest without creating a Secretary of State and changing the Constitution, why wouldn't we just do that?
Well, I don't have that bill anymore. That bill's been changed into something different. And so that's actually an elections bill that the Lieutenant Governor's office, oddly, asked me to run. And so we were able to sub that in and sub that information. It was unanimous in committee yesterday. So the reason why is because I think it's just obvious. We need to take and restructure, realign, and reestablish that inherent conflict of interest and reestablish the, I just completely went blank on it, what it's called, the separation of powers. There we go.
Yeah.
I got it out finally.
There is some perception that you are targeting the lieutenant governor. It has been no secret that some of the Republicans in the House have been unhappy with her, specifically a faction of the Utah Republican Party and Republicans up here who claim that she and Governor Cox didn't get the signatures they needed to qualify. They still call them illegitimate candidates. Do you believe that of our lieutenant governor?
No, I don't believe that. And I actually think what is wrong about that, and that's part of the reason to change this, is one of the reasons to make this change in the beginning to go to a lieutenant governor with the governor's name was for more prestige, for more dignity to the role than just a Secretary of State as it was termed back then in their debates. And if we take this and we put it into, if we take them and we put them into the, this is a good thing you're recording this. If you take it and you put it into a position that doesn't have that conflict, right? Then you're taking away this problem that we have. Some of the people feel that way. I'm looking to actually take we could call it, I call it muck, the muck of the controversy of elections, and take it away from the lieutenant governor to give that opportunity to be the ambassador for the governor's agenda, to do all of the things that the governor needs them to do, and not have to be saddled with elections and the other duties that are in there. So I'm just taking the statutory duties and moving them into a Secretary of State where they used to be, and keeping a lieutenant governor, and keeping the other things that they did with this too is having that joint ticket and the succession plan. That is absolutely right. But what we did do is we created that inherent conflict of interest in the structure when we adopted in 1980, when we adopted a lieutenant governor, and then only had a lieutenant governor and no longer a secretary of state.
But you call it the muck of elections. Does the lieutenant governor want to be over elections?
You know, I'm not sure what lieutenant governor wants on this one. I've not had that conversation with the lieutenant governor. She's been very busy.
You haven't talked to her about it?
She's been very busy. Once the bill numbers were out there, I just haven't been able to have a meeting with her. I actually saw her a few minutes ago, but it was just for photos. So, but I've talked to past lieutenant governor and a past governor about this very thing, and there is an inherent conflict of interest. I can't even see how someone can't see that there is that in there.
Well, I see the conflict of interest, the potential for a conflict of interest,
Right.
right? But the lieutenant governor has always recused themselves, whether it was Deidre Henderson or Governor Cox at the time when he was lieutenant governor, and whether it was whoever was before that. But they have always, set up a third independent person to kind of oversee elections when they are on the ticket. And likewise, your plan puts in statute a plan for the Secretary of State to be elected. So
Absolutely.
if that person is elected, there will always be a conflict of interest with someone elected overseeing elections.
Good point, and thanks for actually saying that, because that goes back to the Constitution. We put elections in the Constitution for the Secretary of State, and we also put in there that it's according to statute, and that if there is that conflict of interest, then we've set up in the statute that would go first back to Lieutenant Governor to oversee that race. So let's say that the Secretary of State is running for re-election. Then Lieutenant Governor would be the one who would take over.
Okay.
For
So there's a
only for
plan
that
for
race.
that, is
Yes.
what you're saying.
And then if the Lieutenant Governor is also conflicted, then it would go to the Board of Canvassers to make a determination who would be overseeing those races. And it would just be the one for the Secretary of State where we have that. One of the best features of this bill is the fact that we have the Secretary of State to be elected in the midterms. The first election will be in 2028 if the voters choose. 2028, it will be a 2-year term, just a short one, so that we can re-elect on a 4-year term and then have it offset with the other constitutional officers.
Are you open to the plan of just fixing the perceived conflict of interest and not doing the Secretary of State constitutional amendment? Because it seems like that's what you're really trying to get at.
I'm trying to get at the fact that you cannot consider that there isn't a conflict in the statute. There's an absolute conflict in there by having that underneath the Lieutenant Governor. And Lieutenant Governor, and I'm only talking about the position of Lieutenant Governor. I'm not talking about our current Lieutenant Governor.
Right.
The actual position of it, there is no direct accountability for the voters. Because when you elect a governor, you elect the governor because the governor's so awesome. And a lot of times they'll pick someone, and our lieutenant governors have great people. I've really, really appreciated and value them and respect them. But people don't vote for the governor because of who lieutenant governor is. There was one person that sent me a message that said they did. And I'm like, okay, now you got it. Now there's one. So what I'm looking for is a specialization as well. So we have a treasurer and an attorney general, and we have our auditor. Why don't we put them under the governor too?
Because they're independent constitutional officers.
And so should be the Secretary of State.
So would the Secretary of State, under your plan, do anything else besides elections?
Yes, they'll take all the duties that are currently by statute with Lieutenant Governor right now, which is like notarizations and all documents, official documents, and approving all those types of things, and the actions between the legislature and the governor's office. All of that will be the duties of the new. Everything that our Lieutenant Governor currently does, that position, by statute, will move over to the Secretary of State, which frees up our Lieutenant Governor to be the ambassador, as I mentioned earlier.
So they wouldn't have, the new Lieutenant Governor under your plan wouldn't have any other duties besides just being the ambassador, going and
they
preaching the word, if you will, of the governor?
There are many duties if we look into the Constitution, or actually in the statute, there's many duties. And it's delegated by the governor. And that's what's beautiful, is the governor having a running mate that is part of it. As part of their plan and part of helping to get that out and executing those plans. So one of the former lieutenant governors who was a governor appointed 105 judges. And this was, this person told me that. 105 judges, but when we're talking to our governor candidate, we're not interviewing the lieutenant governor candidate to ask those questions, those very things, like what would you do? What would be the criteria? All those types of pieces of information I think are critical to voters to make those decisions. And with the Secretary of State, we will have everyone asking them, tell me what you want to do about this, tell me what you want to do about that. And I think that will be such a value for the people of the state of Utah to have that independent person that they can elect directly for those. We have 29 county clerks. We could elevate one of them. Our good Lieutenant Governor, she could run for it. If she didn't want to run for governor, I don't know, I haven't asked her what she's going to do. She could run. She'd be the most qualified person.
We'll have to leave it there. Representative Lisa Shepard will watch for this bill. Right now it's just sitting in the House waiting to be heard on the House floor. We'll see if it gets through there and if it can ultimately make it through the Senate. So thanks for your time.
Thank you. Thanks for the interview. Appreciate it.
Well, my thanks again to Representative Shepard there. When we come back, Utahns could pay less at the pump if this bill passes. We dig into how a temporary gas tax cut hopes to create long-term change.
You're watching Inside Utah Politics.
Well, welcome back. We're joined today by Representative Hal Roberts. He is the sponsor of a big piece of legislation here on Utah's Capitol Hill that will lower the gas tax. Representative, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Sorry, I just kicked you there. Okay, so this is a big deal for Utahns who everybody except those who have electric cars goes to the pump and fills up their tank. And here, this bill has had a little bit of consternation when it comes to working with the petroleum industry. The state of Idaho got involved. They weren't happy with this proposal. So just outline what your gas tax bill will ultimately do.
Yeah, let me start just setting the table with the problem we're trying to solve. So Utah, we are the #9 oil and gas economy in the United States. We have 5 refineries. Most states don't have any. We've got a booming Uinta Basin who produces the crude oil. We've got an extensive pipeline network. We produce 1.5 times the amount of fuel we consume. And yet our prices, our gas prices at the pump, they're consistently higher than the median across the country. And so the question many Utahns ask is why? Why are we paying more when we have all the infrastructure, all the investment in our state? And the reason why is because we're a part of this larger regional market where the actions of states outside of Utah have an impact on us. If you look at our neighbors on the West Coast, they have been regulating their refineries out of existence. It's taken a lot of supply out of the market. And what that's done is it's pushed prices up here at home. And so what we've tried to do in the bill is 3 things. Number 1, it's a 15% gas tax reduction.
But ultimately, that's going to lower the price at the pump about 6 cents, right?
6 cents per gallon. It is something like $50 to $100 per family per year. It's not going to dramatically change anybody's life. But let me just say this to somebody who is trying to make ends meet. Every single dollar matters up here, and we are always focused on driving down Utahns' taxes. And I will say, it is a $45 million cut. So it's $45 million back into the pockets of Utahns.
But how does that impact the transportation budget, which pays for the potholes, some of the potholes? I mean, cities do that, but it pays for our roads, our major state roads that we drive on, and UDOT and all those things that we need transportation funding for.
Yeah. It will have an impact on the transportation fund. It will likely delay some projects, but here's what I'd say. The way our gas tax currently works right now, it floats up and down with the rack price. The rack price, think of it as like the wholesale price of gasoline. As it goes up, that gas tax goes up. And we were set to see a large drop in the gas tax next year anyways. So think of this one-time cut as accelerating that tax that was already built in, that tax reduction that was already built to be set next year.
So the other thing it does by cutting, the 15%, you say the 6%, or sorry, the 6 cents at the pump is it only lasts through, what is it, next January? So it goes from July to January for about 6 months.
Correct.
And then it goes back to normal. Like, what is the play there? That doesn't seem like a very long time.
You're right, it's a 6-month short-term solution, and I want to get to the long-term solution next, but it's a short-term solution for 6 months, $45 million cut. But the way the gas tax currently works is, like I said, it floats up and down. It's set to drop January 1st, 2027, 10 to 12% already. And so think of this as just pulling that already built-in tax cut that we're already going to see next year, just pulling it forward 6 months.
So you don't see the gas prices spiking in January?
No, because we have a built-in tax cut already happening.
And to that point, in the meantime, in the next 6 months or over the long term, you're trying to get petroleum industries to produce more fuel, and then you're also increasing storage capacity. Talk about those aspects of what the bill will do.
Yeah, there's two components. It is a supply question. Utah has actually increased its manufactured fuel supply by 20% over the last 10 years. That's huge. The problem is, because California has shut down major refineries, you've seen the overall supply in the market drop 12%. And because the supply has come out, everyone's prices are going up, including us here in Utah. What we think we need to do is to get more supply into our market. So the bill does two things. Number one, it streamlines the permitting process for pipeline development investment in our state. It cuts red tape. We have refineries and private companies that are ready to invest in the state of Utah right now. They want to bring 30,000 new barrels per day of manufactured fuel into the state of Utah. They've got the right of way. We want to help them do that, because if you bring 30,000 new barrels of fuel into Salt Lake City, it's going to bring people's prices down. The second part, though, and this is the part that I'm most proud of, is we got industry to commit to increase production at the refineries by 12% over the next 5 years.
And what's the incentive for them to do that other than making money? But they're going to make money either way. They're the petroleum industry. I mean,
well, it's an interesting market dynamic. We have not had a refinery get permitted in the United States since the 70s. No new refineries. So if you're an existing refinery, you have a pretty good business, because there is no threat of a new market entrant. Mm-hmm. You've got a lot of pricing power. And so in some ways, some refineries don't actually want more supply because it hurts their pricing power. The negotiation, and we can talk more about this with Idaho and these other states, originally we needed to create some tension to ultimately get our private partners, Chevron, Sinclair, Marathon, Maverick, the big refineries, to the table to commit to do more supply. That's what shook out in this process, and it wasn't easy. There was a bunch of times I thought the deal was dead, and I want to throw credit to Speaker Mike Schultz, who's led this effort. He did not waver. We did not back down from the negotiation table, and I think we got industry to do something that's a win-win for us and them, which is bring more supply into our market, which will bring prices down.
Because you were originally threatening to tax the exports of fuel that leave Utah. That's when Idaho got involved and said, hold up, this is going to cost our people more money. We don't like this. They sort of threatened the speaker. The governors got involved. It became this whole thing. So how did you get to, oh yeah, the petroleum industry will just create more supply? Like they've got to be getting something out of this. Like yeah. How did you get to that deal?
Well, look, there was never an intent to tax export product. What happened was you had a crafty lobbyist, I don't know who, but somebody stirred the pot against Utah's interest, went to Idaho, and it became this big thing where there was a lot of political theater. At the end of the day, there was never a bill publicly displayed that was going to have an export tax. What we were looking at was a refinery tax that we were going to use to offset the gas tax for Utahns here. And there was pushback from industry on that. I think it started the conversation. If you're trying to get an industry that doesn't always want more supply because it hurts their competitive advantage to commit to more supply, you need to have some kind of leverage point. I think that's what that created. And I think ultimately we got to a win-win. We have good partners at the refineries who have committed to bringing more supply in, who recognize that they want to be good partners in our state. We want to be partners with them. We need them to bring in supply, and that's what this will do.
So
this deal will do.
What happens if they don't hold up their end of the deal and we've just cut our transportation budget by, what did you say, millions of dollars, and Idaho doesn't hold up their end of the bargain with making sure the Bear River gives us enough water to the Great Salt Lake? Like, is there any teeth to this?
Well, to be very clear, we're not, the transportation fund, which is what's used to maintain roads, and it's funded by the gas tax and other things, we were already set to have a drop in that fund. That fund grew a lot over the last 5 years because of inflation. We've been dealing with the anti-oil and gas policies of a prior administration who made it difficult for oil and gas to flourish in our country. Prices went up. If you look at where prices are at now, they've dropped dramatically under the Trump administration. And so because of that, the gas tax was already set to come down. The amount of money, I should say, that would be used for the transportation fund. So we're just pulling that forward 6 months. We've had this very flush transportation fund. So that's point number one. But point number two, within the bill, we do have the ability to have oversight over the industry partners to make sure that they keep their side of the bargain. And I've worked very closely with that industry. There is a benefit that we have in our state having the refineries. Our prices are lower generally than Idaho. And I would say we're going to watch closely and monitor it and make sure the investment they've committed to actually happens in the state.
Representative Cal Roberts, we'll have to leave it there. Thanks for talking through that with me.
That was
I
great.
Appreciate it. Yeah. And we'll watch this bill to pass the legislature in the coming week, in the last week of the session. Thanks for your time.
Great. Thanks, Lindsay.
All right. Appreciate Representative Roberts there again. You can find more of our reporting on the gas tax bill on our website, abc4.com. When we come back, Utah lawmakers weigh in on the State of the Union address, how Utah played a role in the president's record-breaking speech.
You're watching Inside Utah Politics.
Well, welcome back. President Trump touted the economy and blasted Democrats during this week's State of the Union address, the first of his second term. Washington correspondent Kristen Escow here now with a recap.
It was the longest State of the Union address ever, clocking in at 1 hour and 48 minutes. President Trump discussed several items on his policy agenda and criticized Democrats for their lack of support.
The state of our union is strong.
With the midterm elections looming, President Trump gave his record on the economy high marks.
The roaring economy is roaring like never before.
And he criticized the Supreme Court's recent ruling striking down most of his tariffs, as 4 of the justices sat stone-faced in the House chamber.
Despite the disappointing ruling, I believe the tariffs paid for by foreign countries will, like in the past, substantially replace the modern-day system of income tax.
The president didn't hold back when going on offense toward Democrats.
These people are crazy.
And a few Democrats shouted back.
They're blocking the removal of these people.
Virginia Governor Abigail Spanberger gave the Democratic response, pushing back on President Trump's claims of economic success.
Costs are too high in housing, healthcare, energy, and childcare.
But there were a few moments that received bipartisan applause. President Trump presented the Purple Heart to the National Guardsmen who were shot in Washington, D.C., and he awarded 2 Congressional Medals of Honor.
Chief Warrant Officer Slover, with our nation's highest military award, Captain Royce Williams, with his Congressional Medal of Honor.
President Trump also addressed Iran amid the ongoing nuclear talks and the escalating U.S. military presence in the region. He says he still prefers to use the diplomacy route and wants to strike a deal with Iran so they don't have a nuclear weapon. In Washington, I'm Kristen Escow.
Well, of course, Utah's federal delegation was in the room and they weighed in on the president's performance. Senator John Curtis says the president did a good job honoring our veterans and sharing their stories. He also appreciated the president's call to end political violence. For his part, Representative Mike Kennedy says the State of the Union address is a time to appreciate what this country is about.
America first is what it's all about, and we can see that with the Olympics. The gold medal Olympic team from hockey came as well, and this is a time to celebrate America. We have our problems, but we can unite it behind the fact that America is the greatest country in the history of the planet.
Representative Blake Moore also got his own shout out from the president for his role in passing the Trump savings account for U.S. kids, though not by name. Take a listen.
I did not name it. It was named by a very tall man sitting right there in the third row. Nice man, a good man.
Well, Representative Moore reacted on social media, sharing a photo of he and the president, encouraging Americans to sign up. Well, thanks for joining us this week. We will see you for the final week of the legislative session.